The rain came down like it had a purpose to wash something away. In the middle of the endless Missouri countryside, where the fields turned to mud and the wind carried the smell of rot, a lone car crawled along a dirt road. The headlights sliced through the downpour, catching brief flashes of twisted fence wire, half-dead corn stalks, and the shadow of a farmhouse that had seen too many winters. Margaret Halston gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. The wipers dragged across the windshield with a squeal that matched the sound in her head. Tom's last phone call. "Don't come here. Maggie, please. You wouldn't understand." Then silence. 2 days later, he was found dead on the very property that now stood in front of her, black against the lightning. People said it was suicide. Margaret never believed that. She pulled up to the gate, the rusted metal screaming as she pushed it open. The rain plastered her hair to her face as she stepped out, her boots sinking into mud. She lifted the lantern from the passenger seat. No electricity had ever been restored here, and its weak, yellow glow trembled against the walls of the old barn beside the house. The wind moaned through the broken slats, almost like a voice trying to form words. "Jesus," she whispered under her breath, then forced herself forward. The farmhouse loomed above her, 3 stories of decaying wood, its windows like hollow eyes. The porch sagged under her weight, groaning like something alive. She hesitated before pushing the front door. It swung inward with a dry creak. The air that greeted her was cold, damp, heavy. It smelled of mildew, wet earth, and something faintly sweet, like rotting apples. Inside, it was darker than she expected. Her lantern flickered, and in trembling light she saw them, the photographs. Dozens of them, still hanging on the walls despite the rot. The Halston family, generation after generation. Stiff faces, empty eyes. Her gaze stopped on one picture, in particular Tom, as a boy standing in front of this same house. His smile was forced, his eyes distant. There was a woman beside him, tall, wearing a plain white dress. The caption beneath read only, "Mrs. Alden." Margaret didn't remember Tom ever mentioning her. She set her bag on a dusty table and called out, her voice echoing. "Hello? Anyone here?" Nothing. Just the steady ticking of rain against the windows. A door banged somewhere upstairs. Margaret froze. Every hair on her arm stood up. She told herself it was the wind it had to be, but the sound that followed wasn't the wind. It was footsteps. Slow, deliberate, measured. Her pulse jumped. "Tom?" she said without thinking. Her voice cracked out no reply. Only the faint creak of boards above her. She found herself moving toward the staircase, lantern raised. The steps moaned under her boots, dust lifting into the air like breath. The hallway stretched before her narrow, lined with faded wallpaper that had bubbled and peeled away. As she passed, the air grew colder. Her lantern sputtered, dimming, then flared back to life. Somewhere down the corridor, something whispered, a voice so low she couldn't make out the words. She stopped, holding her breath. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, closer this time, followed by the faint rustle of fabric. Margaret's hands shook as she pushed open the first door she reached. The hinges screamed. Inside was a bedroom frozen in time. A canopy bed draped in moth-eaten sheets. A dresser with a cracked mirror. And in the center of the room, a rocking chair that moved slowly back and forth, on its own. Her throat went dry. "Hello?" she whispered. The chair creaked. The room smelled faintly of flowers, lilacs. Maybe, but underneath was something metallic, sharp, like dried blood. She took a step closer, raising her lantern toward the far wall. Something dark had been smeared there, handprints maybe? No, they were streaks, trails, red-brown, dried years ago. And on the floor, half hidden beneath dust, was a small leather-bound book. Margaret crouched and picked it up. The cover was cracked, the pages brittle. She turned to the first entry. The handwriting was Tom's. She speaks to me at night, says she's lonely, says she never left. Another line below it, I can hear her under the floorboards. Margaret's chest tightened. Oh, Tom. She turned the page, but before she could read further, the rocking chair stopped moving. The air grew completely still. Her lantern's flame bent sideways, as though something had breathed on it. Then came the sound. 3 slow knocks from behind the wall. Knock, knock, knock. Margaret stumbled back, clutching the lantern. Who's there? Nothing. Silence again. Then the floor beneath her creaked slowly, rhythmically like footsteps circling her. She backed toward the door, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The door slammed shut behind her. She screamed and twisted the handle, but it wouldn't move. Her fingers slipped on the cold metal. Let me out, she shouted. The whisper returned, louder now, inside the room. It was a woman's voice, soft and broken, repeating the same words over and over. Tom, you came back. Margaret's breath hitched. I'm not Tom, she cried. The lantern flickered once, twice, and then went out. Darkness swallowed everything. She could feel the cold press against her skin like invisible fingers. From right beside her ear, a whisper. But you smell like him. She spun, lantern clutched like a weapon, but there was nothing, only a faint outline by the window. A figure, tall, white, motionless. Lightning flashed outside, and for one split second she saw her face, pale, hollow-eyed, and smiling. Margaret screamed. The next instant, the window burst open, wind and rain tearing through the room. The lantern slipped from her hands and shattered. She stumbled backward, her foot hit the edge of the bed, and she went over the frame, crashing onto the floor. Something moved toward her, a whisper sliding across the floorboards like silk. Stay with me. He did. Margaret crawled toward the door, nails scraping the wood. She yanked the handle. This time it gave way, and she fell into the hallway, gasping. The lantern's broken glass had cut her palm. She didn't even feel it. The house was alive with sound now, doors creaking open, distant murmurs, a sob from somewhere deep below. She backed away toward the stairs. Then from behind her, that same soft whisper, don't go. Not yet. Margaret turned. The hallway was empty, but all the family portraits, the same stiff faces that lined the walls, were now turned toward her. Every one of them, their eyes wide open. She ran, and somewhere behind her, in the darkness of the farmhouse, a rocking chair began to move again. Margaret didn't remember running down the stairs. All she knew was that the next moment, she was standing in the front hall, chest heaving, heart slamming against her ribs. The lantern was gone, only faint flashes of lightning through the cracks. And the boarded-up windows gave her glimpses of the room, the furniture draped in sheets, the walls crawling with damp. The house moaned around her like something in pain. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "It's just the wind. It's just the goddamn wind." But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Then came the sound again. Not wind, footsteps. From upstairs. Slow, deliberate, dragging. She didn't wait to find out what it was. She bolted for the door, wrenching at the old knob. It didn't budge. She slammed her shoulder into it again and again, until splinters cut her arms. The door might as well have been made of steel. Her breath fogged in the air. She could see it now, every exhale a small white cloud. The temperature had dropped fast. Too fast. Then, from behind her, Tom. Margaret spun. Who's there? No answer. The word echoed down the hall, soft and sad, like someone crying through the walls. She backed away slowly, eyes darting to every shadow, every movement of the curtains in the draft. And then she saw it dot at the far end of the hall, the faint outline of a figure, tall, unmoving, wearing white. The lightning flashed, illuminating. if for only a second before plunging everything back into darkness. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. The figure was gone. She turned and ran. Her boots pounded against the warped floorboards as she burst through the back of the house, pushing open the kitchen door. The smell hit her first rot mold, something animal. The ceiling sagged, black with water damage. A rusted stove sat in the corner, and above it, dozens of knives hung on hooks. All of them began to rattle. "Stop it," she screamed, backing into the counter. The knives trembled harder, clinking against one another until one fell to the floor with a metallic clang. That broke her. She ran through the back porch, out into the storm. The rain slammed against her like bullets, soaking her within seconds. Her breath came in gasps as she sprinted across the field, mud sucking at her boots. The wind roared in. Her ears, the field stretching endlessly in every direction. But something was wrong. The road was gone. The trees that lined the edge of the property were gone too. It was just field. Miles and miles of it. "No," she whispered, spinning in a circle. "No, that's not possible. The road's right there." Her words caught in her throat as a whisper carried across the wind. "You can't leave." Margaret froze. It was close. Too close. She turned toward the sound. There among the swaying wheat something was moving. A figure gliding between the stalks, pale against the darkness, the same white dress. "Who are you?" Margaret shouted. Her voice cracked as thunder rolled across the fields. "What do you want from me?" The figure stopped. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then it tilted its head in that slow, inhuman way that made Margaret's stomach twist. "You shouldn't have come back," the voice said. It wasn't loud, but the words reached her clearly, as if whispered directly in her ear. Lightning split the sky. The figure vanished. Margaret turned and ran, not caring where, just away. Her boots slipped in the mud as she stumbled toward the barn, its roof half collapsed, its doors hanging open. She threw herself inside, slamming the door shut behind her. For a moment, there was only the sound of her own breathing. She leaned against the wall, wiping water from her face, trying to steady her shaking hands. The barn smelled of hay and rot and something older, something like burnt flesh. She raised her head. The lanterns hanging from the beams began to sway, though there was no wind inside. Margaret's eyes adjusted to the dimness, and that's when she saw them, boot prints. Dozens of them dried into the dirt floor. Some small, some large, but none of them were hers. At the far end of the barn, something moved in the shadows. She could hear the faint creak of rope, the whisper of fabric shifting. "Hello?" she said, barely above a whisper. The sound came again. Creak, creak, creak. She lifted her lantern, then froze. Hanging from the center beam was a rope. A noose, and beneath it, the floor was dark, stained with something that hadn't washed away even after all these years. Her heart hammered in her chest. She stepped closer without realizing it, drawn forward, her breath shallow. The smell was stronger here, almost sweet. She glanced up at the rope again, and that's when she saw it. Fingers, just the faintest shape of fingers, curling around the beam. Margaret stumbled back, a cry stuck in her throat. The lantern's light swung wildly, throwing shadows across the walls. Something fell from above, a small object that hit the floor with a dull thud. She crouched, trembling, and picked it up. It was an old wedding ring. Her initials were engraved inside. Her stomach dropped. "No," the whisper came again, this time from behind her. "He promised me he'd never leave." She turned. No one was there, but in the dirt at her feet, new footprints appeared one after another, moving toward her. Margaret backed up until she hit the wall. Her mind screamed to run, but her body refused to listen. The prints stopped just inches from her boots. She looked up slowly and saw her, the woman from the window. White dress soaked in shadow, face pale as wax, hair black and heavy with water. Her eyes were endless, hollow, and filled with something that wasn't human. Margaret pressed herself against the wall. "What do you want?" She gasped at the woman, tilted her head again. "He stayed," she whispered. "Now it's your turn." Margaret's scream ripped through the storm. She lunged for the door, but it flew open before she reached it, slamming into the wall with enough force to shake the barn. The wind howled in, carrying the smell of rain and decay. Margaret bolted through it, into the fields once more. The rain blinded her. The thunder swallowed her screams. She didn't know how long she ran before collapsing to her knees, gasping, drenched in mud. When she looked up, the farmhouse was there again, right in front of her, exactly where she'd started. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's not." A flash of lightning cut across the sky, and for an instant, she saw something in the upstairs window. A figure, watching her. Not the woman this time. It was Tom, and he was smiling.
Margaret couldn't feel her legs anymore. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her lungs raw from the cold. The storm had settled into a relentless drizzle, the fields whispering softly in the dark. The farmhouse stood before her like a giant tomb, windows black and empty, door slightly open, as if inviting her back inside. She wanted to run the other way, but something in her body moved without permission. Some unseen pull, dragging her step by step toward the porch. The boards groaned under her weight. The air smelled like rust and wet wood. The door creaked open wider as if breathing in her fear. She stepped inside. The storm sound faded instantly, swallowed by the house. It was silent again, that suffocating heavy silence, the kind that pressed against the skin and filled the ears until her own heartbeat felt like thunder. Her voice trembled when she whispered, "Tom?" For the briefest second, she thought she heard movement upstairs. Then, footsteps on the landing, slow, steady, familiar. Margaret's lips parted. "Tom, if that's you, please say something." The footsteps stopped. Then a faint light flickered at the top of the stairs. It wasn't the lantern she dropped earlier. This light was dimmer, almost blue, like moonlight caught in fog. It pulsed softly, alive. Margaret started up the stairs, one hand sliding along the cold banister. Her boots left muddy prints on the warped steps. The air grew colder with every foot she climbed, until she could see her breath again. At the top, the hallway stretched ahead of her, longer than before, impossibly long. Doors lined both sides, some half open, others sealed tight with age. The light came from the last door on the right, Tom's old study. She hesitated. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to press them against her skirt. Then she pushed the door open. The light vanished. The room was dark, except for one thing, the rocking chair by the window. It was moving, back and forth, back and forth. Margaret's breath hitched. "Tom?" The chair stopped. She stepped closer, her boots creaking on the floorboards. The air in the room was freezing now. She could see frost crawling across the glass of the window. Something whispered behind her ear, soft, almost gentle. "He missed you." Margaret spun around. No one there. When she turned back, the chair was full. A man sat in it, facing the window. His shoulders were broad, his head tilted slightly downward, hands resting on the arms of the chair. His clothes were soaked, dark with something that looked like water, until she realized it wasn't water. Her throat tightened. "Tom!" The man didn't move. She stepped closer, heart slamming in her chest. "Tom, please look at me." He did, slowly. His head turned, the sound of bone and sinew grinding. His face was pale, lips grey, eyes completely black, empty pits that swallowed the light. Margaret stumbled back with a scream. Tom smiled, but it wasn't really a smile. It was a stretch of skin over bone, a grotesque imitation of what he used to be. "You came back," he said. His voice was wet, distorted, as though spoken through water. "Tom, what happened to you?" she cried. "What is this place?" He rose from the chair, his movements stiff but deliberate. "You shouldn't have left me, Maggie." Tears stung her eyes. I didn't leave you. You..." He took a step forward, the floorboards groaning under his feet. "You said you'd stay." Lightning flashed through the window, lighting up the room, and behind Tom, for just an instant, Margaret saw them. Figures, dozens of them. Men, women, children. Faces pale, eyes hollow, clothes soaked in mud, all standing in the corners, behind the furniture, pressed against the walls. Like shadows given form, when the lightning faded, they were gone. Tom's voice echoed through the darkness. "We waited for you." Margaret's body shook. No, this isn't real. You died, Tom. You died here." Tom tilted his head. "And so will you." The walls began to breathe. The air rippled. The floor trembled beneath her boots. She ran for the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't open. She pounded it with her fists. The whispers started again, all around her. "Stay, stay, stay." The voices rose, until they became a scream. Dozens of screams layered together, rising through the floors, the ceilings, the walls. Margaret fell to her knees, hands over her ears. "Stop it!" The house obeyed. For one heartbeat, everything went still. Then a hand touched her shoulder. She turned. Tom knelt beside her, his black eyes reflecting her face. "It's okay now," he whispered. "It'll be like before." She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His hand slid to the back of her neck, gentle, almost tender. Then it tightened. Margaret gasped, clawing at his wrist. "Tom, please!" His grip grew stronger. The skin of his hand split. Dark water spilling down her collar. The smell of rot filled the air. "Forever," he said. The floor cracked open beneath them. A blast of icy wind roared up, carrying with it the smell of wet earth and decay. Margaret screamed as the ground gave way, sucking her and Tom into the darkness below. The house shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, then silence. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sky was clear, the fields golden in the early light. The farmhouse stood quietly at the edge of the land, as if it had never been touched by rain. The front door creaked open on its own. Inside, the house was dry, still. The sunlight fell across the hallway, revealing fresh footprints in the mud. 2 sets, side by side, leading toward the stairs. At the top, the door to Tom's study was open. The rocking chair moved gently in the breeze, and in the window, if anyone had been there to see it, 2 figures could be faintly seen in the reflection. A man and a woman sitting together, holding hands. The wind carried a whisper through the fields. "We're home now." Then the chair stopped moving. Forever.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.